Okay, this week, everyone, we are going to have a go at making our own Sculptamold, modelling compound, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to try a different ingredient that I've not seen anybody else use before, and we'll see how it works. So I'll see you after this. Okay, now the secret ingredient, if you will, that I'm going for with this is this stuff, which is called, according to its Amazon listing, virgin wood pulp. And I'll put a link in the comments to the product that I used, and I'll put the picture up on the screen. And this stuff is, I mean, it's sold as an animal bedding, but it is, I think it was £17 for, like, 17 British pounds for pound sterling, that would be it. £17 sterling for 14 kilograms. So it's really cheap. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how it's going to mix with the plaster. I don't know how it's going to mix with the water. But what I'm trying to do is do some different mixes, mix it up with some water, spread it out on some of these scraps of plywood. Give it a go with a texture roller to see how it takes a texture, because that's one of the good things about Sculptamold and modelling compound is that you can texturize it and it works really well. And see if it's cheap, because I've got a lot of boards that I need to cover really cheaply. I can't afford to buy that much Sculptamold or that much modelling compound because I need a lot. So I want a system that I can use, a method that I can use myself. The idea of like cutting up all of that toilet paper and soaking it and shredding it and drying it and shredding it again, that just kind of fills me with dread. I don't really want to do that. So this kind of wood pulp stuff is apparently can be used for paper making. It is the closest I could find to actual paper pulp out there, to like ready pulped paper. So we'll see how it goes. We'll mix it up. I'm going to do a mix that is 2 parts paper to 1 part casting plaster, and I'm using casting plaster rather than plaster of Paris because I think that's stronger. We've got one that's 1 part to 1 part, and then one that's 2 parts plaster to 1 part of the mulch stuff, of the wood pulp, and we'll see which one gives a good consistency, if any of them do. They might all be terrible. I'll still put this video out even if they're all terrible, because I think we can learn something from it. I'm not going exact volumes. I'm kind of roughing, you know, roughly by volume 1 to 1, 1 to 2, whatever. Partly because the digital scales are broken, and partly because I'm just interested to see if the ratios matter. Same with the water. I'm not going to put a specific amount of water. I'm going to go by feel, which is how most of us, I think, use Sculptamold and modelling compound. We kind of look at, okay, it's a bit like cottage cheese, that'll do, we'll put it on. So I'm just going to mix it with water to that kind of consistency. Spread it on here, texture roller it, wait for it to dry, and we'll see if we get any successes at all. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, I'm going to grab a bowl and we'll start mixing some up. Okay, we've got a bowl and we will have a go at mixing up. So the first one, I'm going to go and write on the back what it is. This is going to be 2 mulch to 1 part plaster. Okay, and then this one will be 1 to 1, and this one will be 2 plaster to 1 part mulch, just so I know which one's which. So we'll go for, what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to put the paper mulch in and add some water into there, just see if it soaks it up. I've not really played around with it and see how it goes. Now this is animal bedding, so or sold as animal bedding, so it does say that it is very, very moisture absorbent. I might put a little bit too much water in there, try and siphon some of that off. That's not really worked. Okay, so we'll put the plaster in. I am going to put a rubber glove on, or a latex glove, just to make it a bit easier. Okay, so I'll probably put a bit too much water in that. That is going to be very wet, but we'll see. Might dry, might just take a little bit longer. Now the first thing kind of I'm noticing as I'm doing it is kind of lumpy. There are little bits in it. So I don't know whether I am better to like put this in the food blender before I use it, because I mean I can see even putting it on that is not a smoothable mix. That is not going to take the texture roller. I'll try, but I don't think it is going to take a texture at all. Now, on the other hand, if it holds together, the lumpy texture is quite nice. It might work as, you know, ground forming, something like that. It might give it an interesting bump. But we'll see. We'll see if it starts to dry. Like the thing with Sculptamold and modelling compound is you can smooth it after a while. So I'll come back to it and we'll try that in a bit. Just get rid of that excess into there. So this one is 1:1. So we'll put that in. We'll put plaster in. Give it a bit of a stir. Bit of water. Again, probably way too much water. I'm really not very good at measuring out the water. Could do with getting better at that. What I might try after this is I might take some of it into the, you know, food processor in the kitchen and blend the pulp and see how easily it kind of blends down, because that's an easy step. I don't mind doing that. It's the kind of soaking and drying out and squeezing, you know, to get loads and loads of the toilet paper pulp. Because what I don't know what's happening here, I don't know if this is all my plaster. I don't know if it's not mixing very well with the pulp. And so like this stuff that I poured back in there, maybe, I don't know how much of that is water and how much of that is not. It's all fun and games. So that one, I don't know, it's still quite lumpy. It does seem to be taking the water. The next one will be interesting because the next one is 2:1. The next one is a lot more plaster than pulp. And so we'll see how this one fares. Maybe I should have used warm water. Maybe that would have helped. This is kind of cold tap water. Oh, again, too much. See, I don't think that's helping me. I think what's happening is the plaster of Paris is soaking in with all the water, but then there's just too much of that for that. Yeah, that is not going to work. That is too much water. We'll pull that away. Right. What we will do, just off camera, luckily I had an extra half a cup of the mulch. So I've got half a cup of mulch in there. If I get another cup of plaster. All right, go a bit easier on the water this time. Try and get that paste rather than... Okay, now this feels a bit better. This feels a bit more like Sculptamold modelling compound. Because what the pulp, all that should be there for is just to provide a bit of structural kind of integrity and spreadability. Because you just try and do it just with plaster, even casting plaster, it just won't give you that strength that you need. Now that feels a lot more workable. Now I don't know if that is because of the ratio of 2:1, like a lot more plaster than pulp, or if that is because I just put less water in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away. I'm going to, well, let's try this one. Will this start to smooth? No. So I'm done. Go away, scrape these two off, remeasure out the stuff and try and do it with a lot less water this time and see if we can get something. Maybe this one I think is going to be all right. I don't think more pulp than plaster is going to work, so I'm not going to try that one again. But this one, the 1:1, looked promising, and it's starting to feel promising. I just can't, it's not quite as smooth as a bull as I would like, but I don't know if I just need to let it set for a bit longer. I don't know how much plaster is in there because I don't know how much plaster I left in the water because I made it too watery. So I'm going to scrape that off. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll just try it on this other piece. So we'll move those to one side. I'll go and get some more pulp, try it on this one, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back. We've got 1-to-1 mix here, so we're going to try this again, but with a little bit less water. So go a lot of, go slower in with the water. Try and mix it up. So I haven't really used this casting plaster before, so I don't know what the working time is on this casting plaster. Modelling compound in particular is brilliant because it sets so quickly, but that's not a deal breaker for me for what I am doing. I don't need it to be hugely quick set. If it sets in half an hour, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. On something that's going to be set in over 2 or 3 days, but, Okay, so that feels more like Sculptamoldy-ish. Perhaps not as much as that one. But that's gone down a lot thicker. Now it's hard because I'm trying to put it on a really small thing with quite a lot. So that one's harder to get thin. Whereas that, now that I can easily smooth, but that's got quite a lot. It's got more plaster than thing. So that's easy to smooth over. So we'll try the roller on it. That one is got a nice smooth to it, so that's good. Just lose some of that off the edge, that's fine. You can see the bits in it, but I don't know how visible that will be when it's dried and when it's painted. So let's try and run a texture into it. Ooh, that is a grim sound. Okay. It takes the texture. There's a few bits where it's pulled up, but to be fair, I get that with Sculptamold as well, where it kind of sticks to the thing. And one thing to test will be, so that takes it a lot better. That has got fewer bumps. But one thing, what will be interesting when it's set is to see how strong it is and how well it holds up to kind of strength tests. So the 2-to-1 in favour of the pulp, that's a write-off. The 1-to-1 in favour of the pulp with too much water is a write-off because, we'll see how it dries, but it's just a bit of a mess. These two, I think, are promising. That one, I think, might be too much plaster. It might make it too expensive as well, and I'm not sure what the benefits will be. It goes on a lot smoother, but, is it worth it? This one could be the winner, the 1-to-1 mix. So we'll see how it dries. I'll come back and I'll give this an hour to dry, and then I'll come back and we will do some tests. We'll kind of put some paint on it. We'll try and chip it or something like that, and we'll see how strong it is. So I'll see you in a bit.
20 minutes later.
Okay, I was planning on leaving this an hour, maybe 2 hours to dry, but as you can see by the clock, it's been maybe 15 minutes, if that, and it's already rock solid. So I'm really pleased with that. 15 minutes is a great dry time. And that's with this kind of casting plaster. It's just a 2 kilogram bag of casting plaster that I got from Amazon. It wasn't expensive. I think it was about £8 for 2 kilograms. That seems expensive. It was maybe less than that. What I'll do is I'll have a look and then I'll flash it up on the screen at this point how much it actually cost. But it wasn't much. It was a couple of pounds per kilogram. When you factor that in with the wood pulp was about £1 a kilogram, you're looking at maybe £2 per kilogram of this kind of stuff, £3. Sculptamold is kind of £10 sterling for a kilogram, and I can't find anywhere to bulk buy it. I know Luke Towan over in Australia kind of seems to be able to bulk buy it. I can't seem to find that in the UK or any equivalent. Geek Gaming Modelling Compound, which is my favourite of the two. I prefer that over Sculptamold. That again is like £8 or £9 for a kilogram. And they're great prices if you're doing small things. I need a lot. I need to cover all of those Mordheim boards that I'm building. So I need a lot. It stacks up really quickly. So this, I am really, really impressed with. Okay, and there's a little bit, like I could probably snap it, but it is still, it's still slightly damp, but it's solid. That is not, that one in particular, I can't bend at all. That is not going anywhere. Once that is painted and it's got the kind of sealant stuff that I put on the Mod Podge and varnish mix, that is holding up to everything. That is as tough as anything, I'm convinced. The 2-to-1 in favour of plaster ratio is a lot smoother. It's taken the texture really well. If I was doing something like a road and I wanted to use a texturer, I might change the mixture slightly to do that. But for the bulk stuff that's going on the land, this is absolutely fine, the 1-to-1 ratio. That has really held together. It's really tough. It's not going anywhere. The only bumps on here now are the ones from the texture roller that I put on. They're not from the pulp at all. So it was just slightly less smooth when I put the texture on. So I used some cheap acrylic paint. We'll just give it a go just to see. I mean, it's plaster. It should take it absolutely fine. Really, if I was doing this properly, I might water the paint down a little bit just so that it spreads more easily. And this is not at all the appropriate brush to do it. I just grabbed the biggest brush I could find on my way up to the studio. It's got a very weak bristle, so it's not going into the crevices really well. But it's taking the paint. If I go over a smooth bit there, that'll be a better example. It is, at the end of the day, it is just casting plaster, which is the same thing that is in Sculptamold, same thing that's in Modelling Compound, as far as I'm aware, for both of them. Casting plaster is stronger, from what I understand, from what I've read, than plaster of Paris. So that makes sense. That makes sense why it's on here, why they would possibly use it. I mean, I don't want to say that that's what they use for definite, because I don't know. It's trade secrets. But I would imagine that it is something very similar. There might even be a stronger plaster out there. If there is, let me know in the comments. I don't think kind of gypsum plaster is any stronger, the kind of stuff that you'd plaster a wall with. So I think, plaster of Paris is not strong. I remember making plaster of Paris models as a kid. You get the little molds. I used to have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle set. And every time I made them, Donatello's head would fall off when I was getting them out of the mold because of the way it was designed. And plaster of Paris is just not that strong. I think if I tried that with this casting plaster, it might work. So, as we can see, I'm holding it up, see if I can get the camera to focus. There we go. So you can see, the detail is there, especially when it paints. It's a bit like 3D printing. When you 3D print a miniature, you can't really see all of the details until you prime it. With this, as soon as you put on the paint, you can see a lot more of the detail coming through than you can when it's just white. That was the 1-to-1 mix, whereas the 2-to-1 in favour of the plaster, you can see more of the detail white. But actually, once it's painted, I don't think there's a huge difference between them. I think once you've painted them, got a dry brush on them, you've got a bit of dirt in there, you've got kind of static grass, and all the extra bits that you're going to put on a board, I don't think there's a huge difference. This one would obviously use a lot more plaster, which is the more expensive of the two ingredients. So this one I'm tending to lean towards. It also does feel a little bit... No, I think they're both probably as strong as each other. Maybe it's subconscious that I'm thinking this one. But to me, that is definitely a success. Considering I don't have to shred all the tissue paper, I don't have to soak it, oven cook it, shred it again, do all of those processes. I can just buy a big, 14 kilogram bag from Amazon or from wherever. Other supplies are available. Buy a big bag for, £1 a kilogram. I don't know if it would be cheaper to make it out of toilet paper, quite possibly. But my time is probably worth more than the cost difference. The amount of time and hours I would have to invest to make a lot of it. And then the gas, gas in the UK at the minute, £300 a second, it feels like, to put your oven on. And I don't think I can do this in the air fryer, which I do everything else in now. So I'm calling this an absolute resounding success. I'm really, really pleased. I ummed and ahed about buying it, thinking, do I really want to do a video about this? This is the kind of thing that could fall flat on my face. And I thought, well, you know, if it fails, it fails. Great, we've learned something. So I am absolutely over the moon that this is a complete success as far as I can tell. We'll see if it explodes overnight, but for now, I love it. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later.